3 things. That is all this soup asks of you. A few cloves of garlic, a handful of stale bread, and a good pour of olive oil. That is the entire shopping list. And out of those 3 humble, ordinary things comes a bowl of soup that has warmed kitchens across the high plains of Spain for hundreds of years. The soup the old Castilian shepherd swore could chase off a deep chill, settle a sour stomach, and put a tired, aching body back together again after a long night out in the cold with the flock. They called it sopa de ajo, garlic soup. And the very first time you make it, standing over your own stove, breathing in that smell, you will understand in your bones why it never disappeared, why it survived wars and famines and centuries while fancier dishes came and went. I am Roy Bolt, and here in the Healing Kitchen we cook the old way, the honest way, the way that fed people who lived long, hard, healthy lives on almost nothing at all. So stay with me right to the end, because I am going to show you exactly how this comes together. Every step, every secret, and it is ready in about 15 minutes from the moment you pick up your knife. Grab a pen if you have one nearby, because this is one of those recipes you will come back to for the rest of your life. Let us start with the garlic, because the garlic is the whole soul of this bowl, the beating heart of it. You want a full head. Yes, you heard me right. A whole head. 8 or 9 cloves, maybe 10 if they are on the small side. Now, do not be frightened by that number, because I know it sounds like a lot. Here is what most people do not understand about garlic. When it is eaten raw, it is fierce and sharp and it bites back. But when garlic is cooked low and slow and gentle in good olive oil, it loses every bit of that raw aggression and turns sweet and nutty and mellow, almost buttery, the very same way a head of roasted garlic does. It becomes something else entirely. So peel all those cloves and slice them thin. Thin slices are important. They give up their flavor into the oil faster, and they toast far more evenly than a thick chunk ever could. Take your time with it. There is something almost meditative about peeling and slicing a head of garlic, and it is the first small act of care that this whole soup is built on. While you're at it, deal with the bread, because the bread is the second of our 3 things, and it is every bit as important as the garlic. You want 3 or 4 good slices of bread that have gone a little stale. Day-old country bread, a rustic loaf, a baguette that has dried out on the counter, sourdough, whatever honest bread you happen to have. And here is the part that surprises people. Stale bread is not a flaw here. It is the entire point. Fresh, soft bread turns to sad mush the moment it hits the liquid and disappears into a paste. But day-old bread with some firmness and structure left in it, drinks up the broth and holds its shape and gives the soup that thick, spoon-coating, satisfying body that turns it from a thin broth into an actual meal that sticks to your ribs. So tear it or cut it into rough cubes about the size of your thumbnail. Do not be too neat about it. This is peasant food, and the rough, irregular edges are part of its charm. Now for the third thing, the olive oil, and I want you to listen to me on this one. Set a heavy pot or a deep, wide pan over medium heat and pour in a genuinely generous amount of olive oil. 3 or 4 good tablespoons, more than you probably think you need. This is a peasant dish. Yes, born of poverty and thrift, but the olive oil is not the place to be stingy or careful. The oil is where the richness comes from, the body, the silk. It is doing the real work here, carrying the flavor of the garlic into every corner of the soup. And it is doing real, honest work for your body too. The very same good fat that has fed the long-lived people all around the Mediterranean basin for as far back as anyone has bothered to write things down. So pour with a free hand. In a soup with only 3 ingredients, the quality and the quantity of each one is everything, and the oil speaks the loudest of all. When that oil is warm and just beginning to shimmer, add your sliced garlic and immediately turn the heat down low, low and slow. This is the most important moment in the entire recipe, so pay close attention. You are not frying the garlic hard. You are gently coaxing it, the way you would coax a shy thing out of its shell. Stir it around in the warm oil and watch it closely, because this is the one and only place where this soup can truly go wrong. You want the garlic to turn the color of pale honey, soft and golden and unbelievably fragrant, filling your whole kitchen with that warm, sweet, nutty smell. The very second it starts to smell sweet and toasty, you are nearly there. But you must not look away, because the line between perfectly golden and bitterly burnt is a matter of seconds. Burnt garlic turns harsh and acrid, and there is no saving a pot once it has gone there, so keep that flame gentle and keep those slices moving. Patience here, just 30 or 40 seconds of real attention, is the difference between a soup that tastes sweet and mellow and one that tastes sharp and scorched. Let me teach you how to read the garlic, because this is the one skill that truly makes or breaks the soup, and once you have it for life. Use your eyes, your nose, and your ears all at once. With your eyes, watch the color creep from white to the palest gold, like straw, like honey held up to the light. With your nose, lean in close. Raw garlic smells sharp and aggressive, but as it cooks, it softens into something sweet and round and almost nutty, and that shift in the smell is your signal that it is nearly ready. And with your ears, listen to the oil itself. A loud, fast, angry sizzle means your heat is too high and you are only seconds from burning it. A slow, lazy, gentle bubble means you are right where you want to be. When all three line up, the color gold, the smell sweet, the sound gentle, you pull it forward to the next step. Cooking was never really about following times and numbers on a page. It is about paying attention with all of your senses, the way every good cook who came before us had to learn to do. Once the garlic is that beautiful pale gold, add your cubes of stale bread right into the oil alongside it. Stir well, so that every single piece of bread gets coated in that fragrant garlic oil, and let them toast together for a minute or two, soaking up all that flavor, turning crisp and golden at the edges. At this point, your kitchen is going to smell like a Spanish farmhouse at supper time. Warm, nutty, toasty, the kind of deep and homey smell that pulls people in from other rooms to lean in the doorway and ask what on earth you are cooking. That smell alone is worth the price of admission. And now comes the touch that would make an old Castilian cook nod and smile in recognition. Pull the pot off the heat for just a moment and stir in a good spoonful of sweet smoked paprika. Pimenton, they call it in Spain. Now I know technically this is a fourth thing, and I told you 3, but every pantry in the world already has paprika. It costs only pennies, and it transforms this soup. So I'm going to let it slide, and I think you will forgive me. It turns the whole pot a deep, glowing rust red, and it adds a gentle, smoky, earthy warmth that is the very signature of old world Spanish cooking. And the reason you pull the pot off the heat first is important. Paprika scorches in a heartbeat over a direct flame, and scorched paprika tastes like bitter ash and will ruin everything. A few seconds of stirring it into the hot oil off the heat blooms it perfectly, waking up its color and its flavor without burning it. Now, put the pot back on the heat and pour in your liquid, about 4 cups of hot water or broth if you happen to have it. A good vegetable or chicken broth both work beautifully here. But I want you to hear this part very clearly, because it is the quiet miracle at the center of this whole dish. Water alone makes a wonderful, complete, deeply satisfying soup here. You do not need a fancy stock. The garlic and the bread and the oil make their own rich broth right there in the pot, conjuring depth out of almost nothing. That is the genius of sopa de ajo, the thing that let it feed the poorest households through the hardest winters. Add a good pinch of salt, give it all a stir, and bring it up to a gentle simmer. Let it bubble away softly for about 10 minutes. As it simmers, something lovely happens. The toasted bread slowly breaks down and melts into the liquid, thickening it, transforming what was just water a moment ago into something that clings to the back of the spoon and coats your ribs and warms you from the inside out. Taste it. adjust the salt. And there, right there, is a finished bowl of garlic soup, and it would have carried a Castilian shepherd through a freezing, sleepless night on the high plain with nothing else on the table at all. But there is one more old world trick, the final flourish, and it is the one that turns this from a humble soup into a proper, complete, sustaining meal. The egg. In the villages, when the soup was simmering away, the cook would crack an egg or two right into the pot and let them poach gently in the hot broth, the whites setting into soft, tender ribbons, the yolk staying just runny enough to break and swirl through the whole bowl, making it richer and silkier and more golden. If you like, crack your eggs right into the simmering soup now, cover the pot and let them sit off to the side of the heat for 3 or 4 minutes until the whites are just set. Or, if you prefer, do it the other way the mountain cooks did. Whisk an egg in a bowl and stir it slowly into the simmering soup in a thin stream, so it feathers into delicate, silky strands throughout the broth, the way they do for egg drop soups all around the world. Either way, that single egg turns a bowl of bread and broth into something that will keep a grown person genuinely full and steady and satisfied for hours. And on a grey morning when somebody in the house is feeling poorly, run down, coming down with something, this is the exact bowl that gets ladled out and handed over. Light enough for a tender, unsettled stomach, warming and nourishing enough to feel like pure care in a cup. Let me tell you when to reach for this soup, because a dish like this is not really an everyday thing. It is a bowl for certain moments, and knowing them is part of loving it. Make it on the first truly cold night of the year, when the wind has turned hard and you want something warm to hold in your hands. Make it when you can feel a cold coming on, that first scratch at the back of the throat, and you want the comfort of garlic and steam. Make it the morning after a long, hard, sleepless night, the way the old Spaniards did, when your body feels wrung out and needs putting back together gently. Make it when you are cooking for just yourself and do not have the heart for anything complicated, because this asks so little of you and gives back so much. And make it for someone you love who is unwell and carry it to them in a deep bowl with a spoon, because there are very few things in this world that say, I am taking care of you quite as plainly as a bowl of hot, golden, garlicky soup set down in front of a tired person. That, more than anything, is what this soup was always for. Now let me tell you a little about where this soup comes from, because the story is half the reason it tastes so good. Sopa de ajo is old, genuinely old, a dish of the Castilian countryside in the high, dry, cold heart of Spain. It was the food of shepherds and farmers and labourers, the poorest of the poor, people who had garlic hanging in braids, a heel of yesterday's bread, a little oil, and not much else. It was built by necessity, by people who had to make a warming, energizing, filling meal out of almost nothing, and who had to do it fast and cheap. They say it was the soup eaten before dawn, in the cold dark, before a long day's work, which is why some old Spaniards still call it the 6 o'clock soup, the thing that put fire back in your belly when the morning was black and freezing. And in the lean, hungry years after Spain's civil war, when food was scarce and rationed and stale bread was sometimes the only thing in the house, this humble pot of garlic and bread and water kept countless families alive. It was also a traditional dish of Lent, of the fasting days, precisely because it was so plain and meatless and humble. This is not a soup that was invented in a restaurant. It was forged in hardship, and it carries all of that history in every spoonful. And here is the part I find genuinely fascinating, the reason this soup belongs in a kitchen that cares about healing. Garlic has been treated as something close to medicine for just about as long as human beings have been writing things down at all. The story goes that the laborers who built the great pyramids of Egypt were given rations of garlic to keep their strength up. Spanish grandmothers reached for it at the very first sniffle of a winter cold, long before anyone in a laboratory could explain why it might help. And here is the interesting part that the modern world has confirmed. When a clove of garlic is sliced and crushed, it releases the very compounds that give it that famous, sharp, pungent smell. And those are the same compounds that researchers have spent decades studying with real interest for the ways they appear to support the heart, the blood, and the body's own natural defenses. Now, I am not handing you a pill or making you a promise here. I am handing you a bowl of whole food, the way people have always eaten it, the way nature intended. A whole head of garlic, gentled into sweetness, carried in good green olive oil, soaked into honest bread. That is a combination that fed and fortified working people for centuries and quietly kept them on their feet through hard, demanding lives. Let me say a word about that bread too, because in the old world, bread was never an afterthought. It was the staff of life itself, almost sacred. Nothing was ever wasted, least of all bread. A loaf was baked to last the week, and as it dried and hardened, it did not go in the bin. It went into soups exactly like this one, into bread puddings, into a dozen thrifty dishes designed to give old bread a glorious second life. There is a whole family of these peasant soups all across the Mediterranean, built on the simple, brilliant idea of stale bread plus a little fat plus water or broth, because that is what poor, resourceful, clever people had. The Italians have theirs, the Portuguese have theirs, and the Spanish have this one. So when you tear that day-old loaf into the pot, know that you are taking part in one of the oldest and wisest traditions in all of cooking. The art of turning almost nothing into something nourishing and good, and letting not one single crumb go to waste. And one more word about that olive oil, because in Spain, it is not merely an ingredient, it is a way of life. The high plains and rolling hills of that country are covered in ancient olive groves, some of the trees older than the towns around them, and good oil has flowed through that cooking for thousands of years. The Spanish cook reaches for it the way others reach for butter, without a second thought, and in a soup like this, it plays two distinct roles. The oil you cook the garlic in gives the broth its body and its warmth and carries the flavor everywhere. But the raw, uncooked oil you drizzle over the very top at the end is something else, entirely fresh and green and peppery, almost spicy at the back of the throat if it is a really good one. That raw finish is where a great deal of the goodness lives, and it is where the brightest, liveliest flavor lives too. So if you can, keep a bottle of something decent set aside just for finishing, and use it with a free and generous hand right at the end, poured straight over the hot bowl. It is the small final touch that tells you a real cook stood at this stove. And think for a moment about what is not in this bowl, because that is just as important as what is. There is no cream, no heavy block of cheese, no butter, no processed anything, nothing at all from a packet or a jar or a factory. Just 3 honest things from a working pantry. The same 3 things a poor household could keep on hand through a hard, lean winter when the shops were far away and the money was tight. That is the quiet genius of true peasant food. It was built to do 2 jobs at once: to heal and to stretch, to make a very little go a very long way, and to leave the body better and stronger than it found it. The people who ate like this, day in and day out, year after year, were not chasing the latest health fad or counting anything. They were simply eating the only way they knew how, with what they had, and they happened to build long, sturdy, resilient lives doing it. We are the ones who forgot all of this, who traded it away for convenience and packaging. And a simple bowl like this is one small, delicious way to remember. Let me give you a handful of honest tips before you head to your stove, the small things that lift this from good to unforgettable. First and most important, use the best olive oil you can get your hands on, because with only 3 ingredients in the pot, every single one of them gets to stand up and speak, and the oil speaks the loudest. A cheap flat oil makes a cheap flat soup. A good green peppery oil makes a soup that sings. Second, do not rush that garlic. I will keep saying it because it is the one place this goes wrong. That slow, golden honey stage is worth every second of your patience. And it is the whole difference between a soup that tastes sweet and mellow and one that tastes harsh and bitter. Third, if you like a little kick, the Basque cooks up in the north, add a pinch of hot paprika or a crumbled, dried red pepper alongside the sweet pimenton, and it gives the broth a slow, lovely warmth that creeps up on you and is wonderful on a cold night. And fourth, if you want to make it heartier still, into a proper one-pot supper, a handful of cooked chickpeas or white beans dropped in at the end turns this into a stew that will feed a whole hungry family with ease. I should tell you about the cousins of this soup too, the regional variations, because half the joy of an old dish like this is discovering how each region made it their own. Up in the Basque country, they make a famous version called zurukutuna, which builds on this same garlic and bread foundation, but adds flaked salt cod and the sweet flesh of dried choricero peppers, turning it into something richer and more substantial, a real fisherman's restorative. In other parts of Castile, they keep it bone simple, just the garlic and bread and pimenton and an egg, the purest expression of the thing. Some cooks finish it in the oven, cracking the eggs over the top of the soup in little earthenware bowls and sliding them under the heat until the whites just set and the top turns golden and crusty. Every village, every family, every grandmother had her own small variation that she would have sworn on her life was the only correct way. And that is exactly as it should be, because a recipe this old and this humble was never a fixed rule. It was a living thing, passed hand to hand, bent and shaped by whatever each kitchen had on its shelf. Let me head off the little things that can go wrong so they never happen in your kitchen. The first and biggest, as I have said, is burning the garlic. If it goes past golden to brown, if it starts to smell sharp and acrid instead of sweet and nutty, you have gone too far. And honestly, the kindest thing is to start over, because that bitterness will haunt the whole pot. So keep the heat low and your eyes on it. The second is scorching the paprika, which is why you must pull the pot off the heat before it goes in, every time, no exceptions. The third is the consistency. If your soup comes out too thick and porridge-like for your taste, just loosen it with a splash more hot water or broth and stir. If it comes out too thin, let it simmer a few minutes longer, or tear in another piece of bread and give it time to melt down and thicken things up. And the last is salt. With so few ingredients, the right amount of salt is what wakes the whole thing up and makes the garlic and the oil sing. So taste at the end and do not be shy about it. Trust your own tongue. It is the only instrument this soup has ever needed. A few words on serving it, the old way, because the ritual is part of the pleasure. To serve sopa de ajo properly, ladle it steaming hot into a deep bowl, lay an extra piece of toasted bread right on top to float there and soak, and finish with a final thread of raw, green olive oil poured right over the surface at the very last second. That last cold drizzle of fresh oil over the hot soup is the signature of every good Mediterranean kitchen, and it lifts the whole bowl with a bright, peppery, grassy note that cooked oil simply cannot give you. A little chopped parsley over the top if you have it, and then eat it slowly with good bread on the side, ideally with people you care about, because this is comfort food in the truest and oldest sense of those words. It is the bowl you make for someone who is tired or cold or under the weather or just home after a hard day. It is food as care, food as warmth, food is a quiet way of saying that someone is looked after. A practical word, because I know you will want to make this again. Sopa de ajo is genuinely at its very best the moment it is made. Hot from the pot, the bread freshly melted into the broth, and the egg just set. But life is busy, so here is how to work with it. You can make the garlic and bread and paprika base ahead of time and keep it, then add the hot water and the egg fresh in the minutes before you want to eat, which is no trouble at all. And if you do have leftovers, they will keep a day or two in the refrigerator, though the bread will have drunk up most of the liquid and gone soft, so loosen it with a good splash of water or broth when you reheat it, warm it through gently, and slip in a fresh egg if you like. It will not be quite the showpiece it was on the first night, but it will still be waru. This is the food I most love to cook and to share with you, because it proves something we have nearly forgotten in a world of complicated recipes and long, expensive ingredient lists. The dishes that heal us the most deeply are almost always the simplest ones. A head of garlic, a heel of yesterday's bread, a generous pour of good oil, 15 minutes, and a little patience and a little care. That is genuinely all it takes to set down on the table a bowl that has kept people warm and well and on their feet for centuries, and that tastes like every single one of those years of history. There is a deep humility in this soup, and a deep wisdom too, and I think we could all use a little more of both. So go and peel that garlic, take it slow. Let your kitchen fill up with that warm, old-world smell, and let yourself be amazed that something so plain can be so good. So let me leave you with the whole thing one more time, simple enough to carry in your head. The whole head of garlic, sliced thin and cooked low and slow in plenty of good oil until it turns to honey gold. The stale bread torn in and toasted till it drinks up the flavor. The spoon of smoked paprika, bloomed off the heat. The hot water poured over to make its own broth as the bread melts down, and the egg poached gently in at the end to make it a meal, with a thread of raw green oil over the top of every bowl. Take a picture of this screen if you want to keep those steps close while you cook. Make this once, just once, and I promise you it earns a permanent place in your week and your repertoire the way it earned its place in Spanish kitchens 500 years ago and never left. If a bowl like this is the kind of simple, healing, honest food you came here for, the food of the kitchens that quietly built long lives, then stay close to this one with me. Cook it warm, eat it slow, and I will see you at the next pot.